Chapter 1. The Encounter. The desert winds of Ixora were relentless. They swept across the vast, empty expanse with an intensity that could strip the flesh from a man's bones if he stood in the open for too long. The red sands shifted constantly, as if the planet itself was alive, breathing and rearranging its surface to create an ever-changing landscape of dunes. There was no sign of life on the horizon, no green, no thriving ecosystem, nothing but an oppressive heat that shimmered off the sand like a distant mirage. But Liam Hunter, though he could feel the heat through his protective exosuit, stood unfazed, gazing into the abyss that was the planet's massive canyon. His mind wandered to the previous days of research, days spent climbing into the towering rock formations that seemed to reach for the sky. He had observed strange phenomena, disorienting shifts in the magnetic field, peculiar light patterns during the twilight hours, and the oddest of all, the deep, rhythmic sound of something massive moving beneath the ground. It was as though the very bones of the planet were alive, moving, shifting beneath its cracked and dry skin. But what was more puzzling was the fact that no one else seemed to hear or feel it. He wondered if perhaps he was simply losing his mind in the isolation of the endless desert. He had been away from Earth for far too long, and the constant hum of the research station at the base of the cliffs no longer provided him the comfort it once had. Today, he had decided to take matters into his own hands and venture alone into the canyon, where the earth trembled beneath his boots and the shadows stretched out like dark fingers seeking to pull him deeper into the heart of the planet. He had followed the ridge to the west, pushing himself farther away from the station with every step. The day had been long, the sun relentless, and yet there was a strange feeling deep in his gut, something pulling him onward, as if the land itself were guiding him to something. His instincts, honed through years of research and exploration, were telling him to keep moving, to press on just a little farther. He trusted those instincts. He had to, especially in environments as dangerous as this. As the cliff began to curve downward into a steep ravine, Liam noticed the air shift. It was subtle at first, a cooling breeze that seemed to carry a trace of moisture. He paused for a moment, lifting his head to catch the scent of the wind. There was something odd about it. It wasn't the typical arid, dry air of Ixora. No, this carried with it a faint trace of something unfamiliar, something wet. Intrigued and mildly confused, Liam decided to follow the wind. Perhaps it was a natural spring, or perhaps something more exotic was drawing near the surface of the canyon. Whatever it was enough to stir his curiosity. He made his way down the rocky path, each step more cautious as the ground beneath his boots grew increasingly unstable. The temperature dropped, not by much, but enough to make him take notice. The dry, hot desert air that had been with him for hours seemed to retreat slightly, replaced by a strange, almost damp atmosphere that felt out of place in the barren landscape. It was then that he saw a strange, shimmering pool at the bottom of the ravine, almost invisible from a distance, its edges obscured by the jagged rocks that surrounded it. Liam moved closer, his boots crunching against the loose gravel, his mind working furiously to make sense of the sight before him. The pool wasn't large, but it was unlike anything he had expected to find on this planet. It was the color of deep violet, the surface of the water rippling in strange patterns, almost as if something below the surface was disturbing it, though there were no visible signs of movement. As he knelt by the pool, staring down into the murky water, he caught a glimpse of something moving just beneath the surface, a shadow, long and sinuous, sliding through the depths. His heart skipped a beat. He had seen strange creatures on other planets, creatures that lurked in the shadows of distant worlds, but this one felt different. It wasn't like anything he had encountered before. Suddenly, without warning, a splash erupted from the center of the pool, sending a wave of water cascading outward in all directions. Liam jumped back, instinctively raising his hand to shield his face. He stumbled backward, his heart racing as he tried to make sense of what was happening. From the depths of the pool emerged a creature, a massive, alien leopard, its fur sleek and black with streaks of vibrant purple that shimmered under the pale light of the twin suns overhead. Its eyes were the color of molten gold, fierce and intense as they locked onto him. Liam's breath caught in his throat. The creature was huge, nearly the size of a small boulder, and it moved with an unsettling grace, its body sleek and powerful. Its massive paws struck the rock with force, sending cracks through the stone as it made its way toward the edge of the pool. The alien leopard was clearly struggling, its movements erratic and frantic, as if it were fighting against something that wasn't visible to Liam. He watched in horror as the creature's claws scraped against the stone, trying to pull itself up, but it was slipping, its body sliding toward the water once more. Liam's mind raced. This was not supposed to happen. He had never seen anything like it. The alien leopard appeared to be in distress, thrashing against the invisible force that was pulling it into the depths of the pool. Without thinking, his body moved on its own accord. Liam rushed to the edge of the water, extending his arms as if to help, but even as he approached, he knew he had no idea how to assist the creature. He wasn't a zoologist. He had studied alien life, sure, but this was beyond his understanding. Before he could hesitate any longer, the leopard's massive head emerged from the water, its golden eyes locking with his in a desperate plea for help. Without a second thought, Liam jumped into the pool, feeling the strange, cold water rush around him. His heart pounded in his chest as he waded through the murky depths, using his hands to grip the slippery rocks at the edge of the pool. The leopard, now more desperate, scrambled toward him, its claws scraping across his suit as it fought to stay above the water. The creature was too heavy, and Liam could feel the weight of it dragging him downward. But still, he pushed forward, reaching out with one hand to grip the animal's massive fur. With a final, forceful tug, Liam pulled the alien leopard from the water, his muscles screaming in protest as he strained against its weight. For a moment, everything seemed to slow down. He could feel the leopard's body shifting against his own, its breath heavy and erratic as it struggled to stand. And then, as the creature finally regained its footing, Liam stepped back, gasping for air, his legs weak beneath him. The leopard stood, its massive form swaying slightly, its golden eyes still locked onto him. Liam's breath caught in his throat as he realized something. The leopard, though clearly exhausted, was now looking at him in a way that made his skin crawl. Its gaze was not just one of thanks, it was one of recognition. And then, in the silence of the moment, the creature took a single step forward, revealing its true form in full. Liam's face drained of color, and his heart stopped for a moment as he stared in horror at the creature before him. What he had thought was an alien leopard, a strange, exotic creature from the depths of this world, was not just that. The creature's body, sleek and powerful, was covered in markings that Liam had not noticed before. At first, they had seemed like simple patterns, but now, in the light of the twin suns, he saw them for what they truly were. The creature was not just a leopard, was an alien royal, a being of unimaginable power. Its fur shimmered with the symbols of an ancient civilization, and its eyes glowed with the intensity of something far more than simple animal instinct. The leopard's once massive form now appeared regal, its posture upright and proud as it slowly stepped toward Liam, who stood frozen in place, too pale to move. The beast was not a beast at all. It was a queen. Liam's heart hammered in his chest as he stared at the alien leopard, the alien queen standing before him. The realization hit him like a sudden wave, drowning him in disbelief. He had just pulled an extraterrestrial royal from the waters of an alien planet. The markings on its fur, which had once appeared to be nothing more than faint patterns, now seemed to glow with an ancient power, ancient symbols of a civilization long gone, a history far beyond Liam's comprehension. The leopard's eyes, bright and molten gold, bore into him with a strange intensity. It wasn't just looking at him, it was studying him, sizing him up as if weighing his worth, as if considering whether to accept or reject his assistance. The air around them seemed to hum, as though the very fabric of the planet itself had shifted with the Queen's awakening. The winds that had once howled across the desert canyon now calmed, as if the world had taken a collective breath. Everything felt still, almost surreal, and Liam's mind struggled to process what had just transpired. The instincts that had driven him to leap into the pool and save the creature were now overshadowed by a feeling of dread. He had never meant to interfere with something this significant. But now, standing before him, was something that had far more weight than just a simple alien predator, a creature with intelligence, power, and authority that transcended the known galaxy. The Leopard Queen stopped just short of him, her golden eyes narrowing ever so slightly. Liam, still processing the gravity of the situation, took a step back, but he quickly realized there was no escaping this encounter. He had already crossed a threshold by saving her, and the weight of his actions was beginning to settle heavily upon him. His hands, which had been shaking from the exertion of the rescue, now hung limply at his sides, his body frozen in place by the overwhelming presence of the Queen. What are you? Liam stammered, though the question felt inadequate, even to his own ears. He had no idea how to address a creature like this. She was not just any alien life form. She was royalty. She was a being that had seen centuries, perhaps millennia of history unfold. The Queen did not answer with words, but instead, she tilted her head slightly, as though understanding his question, yet knowing that words were not necessary. Her lips parted ever so slightly, and from the depths of her chest came a low rumble, one that resonated deep within Liam's bones. It wasn't a growl, nor was it a hiss. It was something else entirely, an almost melodic sound, a communication of sorts that transcended language. The vibrations from the sound felt oddly familiar to him, stirring something deep in his consciousness that he couldn't quite place. Liam, still uncertain about what to do next, was unsure whether he should run, offer his apologies, or simply wait for the Queen to make her next move. But before he could decide, the Leopard Queen dipped her head slightly, as if acknowledging him in some ancient way. Then, to his shock, she lowered herself to the ground, crouching with her front legs stretched out in a gesture that could only be interpreted as a sign of trust or invitation. Her gaze, once intense and regal, softened just slightly, and for the first time, she appeared less like a predatory creature and more like a being willing to allow him closer. Liam stood there, staring at her, his mind racing. What did this mean? Why had the Queen allowed him to help her? He wasn't a part of her world. He didn't belong here. And yet, she had looked into his eyes with something akin to understanding. A brief shiver of realization passed through him. The Queen, though extraordinary, was also deeply aware of the circumstances unfolding between them. She was aware of the vastness of her own legacy, her role in a galaxy far beyond this desert world, and yet, here she was, accepting the help of a human, a mere exobiologist, a researcher who had stumbled into her domain by sheer accident. Suddenly, the sound of movement broke the silence, and Liam's attention snapped back to reality. It wasn't just the Queen he had to worry about. No, there was something else coming. He could feel it. It was a shift in the air, a change in the atmosphere around him that made every instinct in his body scream at him to move. The Queen, sensing it as well, straightened her posture, her head jerking toward the direction from which the sensation was emanating. Her golden eyes glowed brighter, narrowing as she let out a sharp, low growl, a protective warning that sent a chill down Liam's spine. Without hesitation, he turned to look, and that was when he saw it. A pack of creatures, 4 of them, large, loping beasts, emerged from the shadows of the canyon, moving with alarming speed. Their bodies were sleek, covered in a rough, darkened hide that resembled the texture of the desert itself. Their eyes, though, were the most unnerving part. They glowed with a piercing red hue, locking onto Liam and the Queen with an unmistakable hunger. These creatures were not like the Queen. No, they were hunters, predators, and they seemed intent on one thing: capturing the alien royal. Liam felt his pulse quicken. The Queen had saved him. But now, it was his turn to protect her. Without a second thought, he backed up, moving closer to the Queen as the pack of creatures surrounded them, their growls and snarls rising in volume with every passing moment. They were closing in, and for the first time since arriving on Ixera, Liam felt the full weight of the danger that had been lurking beneath the surface. Chapter 2: The Battle for Survival. The pack of creatures closed in with frightening speed, their glowing red eyes focused solely on the alien Queen. Liam could feel the heat rise in his chest, the adrenaline flooding his system as his mind scrambled to find a way out of this situation. He wasn't a soldier. He wasn't trained to fight alien predators. His skills lay in biology, in understanding the ecosystems of other worlds, not in fending off savage beasts. But something in him stirred something primal, something that demanded action. The Queen had positioned herself between him and the oncoming creatures, her body low to the ground as she crouched, ready to strike. Her powerful legs coiled, her massive claws scraping the rock beneath her as she prepared for the onslaught. Liam instinctively reached for his utility belt, pulling out the standard issue blaster that had been issued to all members of the research team for emergencies. It wasn't much, but it was all he had. He had no choice but to use it. The first creature lunged toward the queen, its sharp claws extended, its mouth dripping with saliva as it prepared to strike. Liam's heart skipped a beat. He raised the blaster and fired. The shot rang out, a crackling burst of energy that hit the creature square in the chest. It reeled back, yelping in pain, but it wasn't enough to stop the pack from advancing. The queen sprang into action just as the other creatures closed in, her movements swift and fluid as she used her powerful claws to rake across one of the attackers. It howled in agony, falling back, but the others didn't hesitate. They moved in tandem, surrounding them in a tightening circle. Liam's pulse thundered in his ears as he fired again, the blaster flashing with each shot. It was working, but the creatures were fast, and they were closing in. His hands trembled, the weight of the situation pressing down on him like an avalanche. He had to do something. The queen was fighting fiercely, but there were too many of them. Too many for both of them to handle alone. "Get back," Liam shouted, though he wasn't sure if the queen could understand him. But in that moment, something strange happened. She seemed to pause, her golden eyes flashing in his direction. It was as if she understood what he had said, as if she knew they needed to find a way to escape. Without warning, she darted forward, her powerful body slamming into the nearest predator, sending it tumbling backward. The pack hesitated, momentarily stunned by her strength. The pack, realizing they were losing ground, began to retreat, their glowing red eyes flashing with menace as they pulled back into the shadows. The queen stood her ground, her body tense and coiled, ready for any further attack. But Liam, breathing heavily, couldn't let the moment pass without acknowledging the terrifying reality of what had just transpired. Are you all right?" he managed, his voice barely above a whisper as he looked at the alien queen. She looked at him, her golden eyes softening for the briefest of moments before she turned away, her attention focused on the retreating pack. Liam knew then that the battle wasn't over. This planet was far from safe, and he was no longer just a researcher. He was part of something much bigger, something that could change the fate of an entire species. The queen stood perfectly still, her body rigid, the muscles of her powerful limbs coiled like springs ready to launch her into action at the first sign of danger. The tension in the air was thick enough to cut with a knife. The pack of alien predators had retreated, but their presence still lingered, like a dark cloud overhead. Liam could feel the weight of their eyes upon him, even though they had faded into the canyon's shadows. The stillness that followed the battle was almost as unnerving as the fight itself. Liam's hands trembled as he lowered the blaster, his heart still pounding in his chest. He had just witnessed a battle between the queen and creatures unlike any he had seen before, beasts that operated with a frightening level of coordination and aggression. The fact that the queen had dispatched them so effortlessly was a testament to her strength and skill. But Liam knew it was only a matter of time before the pack would regroup and return for another attack. This wasn't over. He turned his gaze to the queen, who was now standing tall once more, her golden eyes scanning the canyon. Her sleek fur shimmered under the harsh light of the twin suns, the iridescent markings on her coat pulsating with a faint glow, a sign of her otherworldly nature. She was more than just a creature of flesh and bone. She was an ancient being, a symbol of something powerful and untouchable. But beneath that regal exterior, Liam could sense something more, something vulnerable. She was alone in a world that didn't belong to her anymore, and she had chosen to trust him. It wasn't just a fleeting trust, either. It was something deeper, something he couldn't fully understand. As the queen turned her head toward him, her sharp gaze softened, and Liam could have sworn he saw a flicker of recognition. For a moment, everything seemed to slow, the world around him falling silent. He took a tentative step forward, his feet dragging in the sand, as if the very ground beneath him was holding him back. What was he doing here? What had he gotten himself into? His mind raced as the enormity of the situation began to set in. The queen was no ordinary animal. She was a creature of legend, a symbol of power, and now, she was connected to him, whether by fate, circumstance, or something else entirely. "Why did you save me?" Liam found himself asking, though he wasn't sure why. Perhaps it was the exhaustion from the fight, or the overwhelming sense of awe he felt in her presence. But the question slipped from his lips without thought. He wasn't expecting an answer, of course. She was not human. Communication was a challenge, to say the least. But as he spoke, he noticed the Queen's eyes shift, almost as if she were processing the question. It was an unsettling moment, one that made him wonder just how much the Queen understood about him and the world he came from. She didn't respond verbally, of course. Instead, the Queen lowered her head slightly, a gesture that could have been interpreted as a sign of respect or acknowledgement. It was then that Liam realized something truly astonishing. The Queen wasn't just some alien beast that had gotten caught in the wrong place at the wrong time. No, she had a purpose. She had a role to play in this planet's ecosystem, in this universe. And somehow, he was now a part of it, whether he wanted to be or not. Just as Liam was about to speak again, the air shifted. The faintest vibration hummed through the ground beneath them. It was a subtle sound, barely perceptible, but it was there. A low, rhythmic pulse that seemed to vibrate through the canyon walls. Liam's eyes widened in realization. The pack wasn't retreating. They were regrouping. And this time, they weren't alone. Before he could react, the ground beneath him trembled violently, sending him stumbling. A low growl rumbled from the depths of the canyon, and Liam's heart skipped a beat. The pack wasn't alone. He could feel it now, another presence, one far bigger and more menacing than the creatures they had just fought off. He turned toward the Queen, and to his surprise, she didn't look afraid. She was alert, her posture shifting, her body poised for action. This was a threat she had encountered before. She was no stranger to danger. Liam barely had time to brace himself before the canyon erupted in chaos. The ground split open with a terrifying crack, sending a shockwave through the air. Out of the earth emerged a massive creature larger than any of the predators that had attacked them earlier, its body a terrifying amalgamation of muscular limbs, armored scales, and dark, glistening skin. Its head was enormous, its eyes glowing with a menacing red hue that mirrored the pack's. But this creature was different. It was no longer just a hunter, it was the Alpha. The Queen's posture shifted, her body lowering again, and Liam instinctively took a step back. The Alpha creature stood between them and the pack, its growl echoing off the canyon walls. It was a challenge, a declaration of dominance. Liam's mind raced. He had no idea what he was witnessing, but it was clear that the Queen and the Alpha creature had history. They were rivals, enemies, perhaps even ancient enemies, locked in a battle for supremacy over this barren world. And somehow, he had been dragged into the heart of it. His pulse quickened as the creatures around him began to move. The Alpha was no longer focused solely on the Queen, it had noticed him. The giant creature's eyes locked onto him with the same cold, calculating gaze it had given the Queen moments earlier. But Liam wasn't about to back down now. The Queen had saved him. It was time for him to return the favor. Liam instinctively reached for his blaster, his fingers trembling as he aimed at the approaching Alpha. He had no illusions about what this creature was capable of, but in that moment, it was the only weapon he had. His thoughts raced as he steadied his hand. The Queen had shown him strength, and now he had to find a way to fight alongside her. The Alpha creature let out a deafening roar, shaking the very ground beneath them. The pack moved in, encircling them from all sides. Liam's mind raced, calculating his next move. He had no choice but to trust in the Queen. She was the only one who knew how to handle this situation. She was their only chance. Chapter 3, The Tides of Fate. Liam watched in awe as the Queen engaged in battle with the Alpha creature, her movements so fluid, so graceful, that it was almost as if she were dancing with death. The raw power she displayed was breathtaking, but it was also terrifying. She was fighting for her life, and for his, too. There was no question now. This was no ordinary predator. This was a creature with an ancient purpose, an ancient will, and Liam was part of whatever destiny had drawn them together. The ground beneath him shook as the Alpha creature swung its massive tail, sending shockwaves through the air. The Queen leapt back just in time, her agility and speed allowing her to evade the creature's brutal attack. But Liam knew the odds were stacked against them. The Alpha was too powerful, too relentless. The pack had begun to circle again, growling and snapping at the air, waiting for a moment to strike. Liam's hands tightened around his blaster, but he knew it wouldn't be enough. The shots from his weapon barely fazed the creatures. He needed to think, needed to find something, anything, that would turn the tide of this battle. The queen was stronger than any human, but she was still one creature against a pack, and she couldn't hold out forever. Liam's heart raced as he made his decision. Without thinking twice, he sprinted toward the rock formation, his feet pounding against the canyon floor. The creatures were distracted by the queen's relentless assault, but he knew he didn't have much time. The alpha was starting to recover, and once it did, all bets were off. He reached the rocks and quickly scaled the narrow path between the jagged cliffs. The sounds of the battle echoed through the canyon, a cacophony of growls, roars, and the sound of flesh meeting bone. The queen's fighting was intense, but the longer the battle lasted, the more vulnerable she became. He had to do something. He had to act now. From his vantage point, Liam could see the entire battle unfold below him. The queen was in a fierce struggle with the alpha, her claws cutting through the air as the creature lunged toward her. She was tired. He could see it in her movements. But she wasn't giving up. She couldn't, and neither would he. Liam's heart raced as he scaled the jagged rock formation, his boots slipping slightly on the uneven surfaces. The sounds of the battle below grew louder, each roar of the alpha creature sending a shiver down his spine. The queen was in trouble, and it was only a matter of time before the sheer force of the alpha's attack would overwhelm her. He had to act now. There was no time to hesitate. From his elevated position, Liam had a clear view of the battle unfolding in the canyon. The queen was holding her ground with all the strength and fury of a warrior, her claws slashing through the air with precision. But the alpha was no ordinary predator. It was a brute, larger and stronger than any creature he had ever seen. Its massive claws struck with bone-shattering force, and its thick hide seemed impervious to the queen's strikes. She had managed to land a few blows, but they didn't seem to be enough to turn the tide in her favor. The pack, which had been circling them, now moved in, seemingly eager to finish the fight. Liam watched as the queen's movements became slower, more strained. She was clearly exhausted from the brutal fight, her body bleeding from several gashes inflicted by the alpha and its pack. The realization hit Liam hard. This wasn't just a fight for survival. This was a fight for everything. The queen was fighting to protect something larger than herself, something she had to protect at all costs. The alpha creature lunged again, its jaws snapping, but this time, the queen managed to evade it, her body twisting with an agility that defied logic. However, it was clear that even her extraordinary strength had its limits. The pack was closing in on all sides, the battle becoming a desperate struggle for dominance. Liam's hand tightened around his blaster, his mind racing. He wasn't going to let her die here. Not after everything they had been through together. The narrow path he had climbed was now his only advantage. The queen needed him. He needed to find a way to strike from above, to create a distraction, something that would turn the battle in their favor. He could see the pack shifting, their eyes glowing with the promise of victory. The alpha creature, in all its terrifying power, was at the center of it all, its massive frame a dark shadow that loomed over the queen. Liam didn't wait any longer. He took aim, his hands steady despite the chaos below. With a deep breath, he fired. The blast from his weapon tore through the air with a sharp, crackling sound, and the energy bolt struck the alpha creature square in the side. It howled in pain, its massive body staggering back from the force of the shot. For a moment, everything stopped. The creatures paused, the queen's head turning to look up at Liam with an expression that was almost unreadable. But the moment was brief. The alpha recovered quickly, its red eyes blazing with fury as it turned toward Liam's position, its massive jaws snapping. But the distraction had worked. The pack, confused and startled by the sudden attack, hesitated, giving the queen a brief moment to rally. With a fierce roar, the queen launched herself forward, her claws flashing like blades in the sunlight. The alpha, now enraged and focused entirely on her, met her head-on, their powerful bodies colliding with a force that shook the canyon. The battle between the two titans raged on, the sound of their strikes echoing off the canyon walls. Liam didn't let up. He fired again, this time targeting the smaller creatures in the pack. Each shot sent them tumbling back, some of them yelping in pain as they tried to recover. But the real focus was on the alpha. It was the key to this fight. If they could defeat the alpha, the pack would scatter. The queen could win. They could escape. The ground trembled beneath him as the battle continued, the vibrations coursing through the canyon like the pulse of some ancient heart. The Alpha's roar echoed, and the queen, battered but not broken, surged forward with a renewed fury. Her claws sank into the Alpha's massive shoulder, ripping through its thick hide with a savage power that left the creature howling in agony. But it wasn't enough. The Alpha swung its tail, knocking the queen to the side, sending her crashing into the rocks. Liam's heart clenched in fear as he watched the queen fall. This was the moment when everything could go wrong. But the queen wasn't done yet. Even as she struggled to rise, she locked eyes with Liam. It was as if she were telling him to finish what they had started. A surge of adrenaline coursed through Liam's veins, and in that instant, he knew what he had to do. He had no more time to hesitate. He aimed his blaster directly at the Alpha's exposed underbelly, the only vulnerable part of its armored body. With a final, decisive shot, the blast hit its mark. Liam stood there, breathless, as the dust settled and the sounds of battle faded away. The queen, her golden eyes now focused on him, stepped forward slowly. She was exhausted, her body covered in cuts and bruises, but she was still standing, still alive. Liam's heart was still pounding in his chest as he approached her cautiously. His legs were shaky, his body sore from the physical exertion, but he couldn't help but feel a sense of relief wash over him. They had won. The battle was over, and they had made it out alive. But as he got closer, the reality of the situation sank in. The queen's body language had shifted again, no longer the fierce warrior, but something else. She was acknowledging him, her golden eyes reflecting a mixture of gratitude and respect. Liam felt a wave of emotions flood through him. He had saved her, but she had also saved him. She had chosen to trust him, and together, they had overcome the odds. For the first time since the battle had begun, the queen let out a soft, low growl, a sound that was no longer threatening, but comforting, almost like a purr. Liam stood there, stunned by the creature's sudden change in demeanor. The queen had seen something in him, something beyond the simple act of saving her from the water. She had recognized his strength, his resolve, and his willingness to stand by her side. The two of them, humans and aliens, stood together in the aftermath of the battle. The canyon around them, once filled with chaos and danger, was now quiet, the winds carrying away the last traces of the conflict. The queen's gaze softened, and for a brief moment, it was as if the vastness of the universe itself had paused to watch them. Chapter 4, The Bond. The twin suns began to dip below the horizon, casting a warm, golden glow across the canyon floor. The dust from the battle settled, and the air began to cool as the planet's evening breeze rolled through the canyon. Liam sat down on a large rock, exhaustion creeping into his limbs, but he couldn't tear his eyes away from the queen. She stood near the water's edge, her powerful form silhouetted against the fading light. Her fur, still damp from the pool, glistened in the soft glow of the evening. The queen, though clearly weary, had begun to clean her wounds, her movements graceful and purposeful. Liam watched her, still in awe of the strength and power she possessed. She was no ordinary creature. She was a queen, an ancient, powerful being who had fought to survive in a world that was no longer hers. And yet, despite everything she had been through, she had chosen to trust him. She had fought beside him, and together, they had defeated the pack. Liam's mind drifted back to the moment when he had first seen the queen, when he had rushed to save her from the pool. At the time, he had no idea what he was getting himself into. But now, looking at her, he realized something profound. Their fates were intertwined. They were connected in ways he couldn't yet fully understand, but he knew one thing. He was no longer just an observer of this planet's mysteries. He was part of its story now. The queen turned her gaze toward him, her golden eyes reflecting the fading light of the suns. There was a sense of quiet understanding between them, a bond forged in the heat of battle. Liam felt a deep sense of gratitude toward her, a gratitude that went beyond the simple act of saving her life. She had shown him a world beyond his own, a world filled with creatures and forces that defied everything he had ever known. Liam stood up, his body stiff from the fight, but he walked over to the queen without hesitation. He reached out a hand, not in an attempt to touch her, but to show his respect. The queen, sensing his gesture, took a step toward him, her golden eyes fixed on his face. They stood together in the quiet of the canyon, the weight of their shared experience settling between them. There were still dangers to face, mysteries to unravel, but in that moment, they had won. They had fought together, and they had survived. And for the first time since arriving on Ixora, Liam felt a sense of peace. The journey ahead would not be easy, but he was no longer alone. Together, they would face whatever came next. The queen gave one last, soft growl, almost like a purr of contentment, before turning her attention back to the canyon. Liam followed her gaze, knowing that the adventure they had started had only just begun.